All right, here we go.
All right, cool. So it's up. So welcome everybody to this week's episode of Policy in Pilsner. We have myself, Dave DeMott, Westminster City Councilman, Vanessa DeMott, who is a candidate for HD 29 this year. And then we have a special guest, Tim McCormack, that is running for DA in the 6th, right?
17th.
17th.
Right?
You're a little off.
Like,
maybe I'll just take it from here, Tim. Don't worry.
Right.
Between you and Matt, I'm like, it's Jeffco DA. Well, it's not Jeffco DA. And you, it's Adams. Like, no. Like, okay, well, those are the two areas that concern me and what I do for being an elected. But
Right.
So, well, you know what? Maybe it's best we hand it over to Tim. So first you can tell us what's in his pint, and then maybe he can describe what that area looks like, and then we'll compose ourselves and remember where we're at. And I think it's the garage, and I threw Dave off with the background here. So he's all over the place now.
Well, this is one of those commemorative mugs from Coors, and smells like freedom because we got the eagle on there.
nice.
And it's full of Coors. So, this is the bottle that it came from. This is one of my favorites. So I buy local, support local as best we can. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be on here tonight. I am Tim McCormack. I'm running for district attorney, and I'm running for the district attorneys in Adams and Broomfield counties. Together, that makes up the 17th judicial district. And like you mentioned before, there's a candidate over in the Jefferson County DA's office named Matt Durkin, exceptional man, great candidate, would be a wonderful district attorney. He's in the first. Okay, so you have the first judicial district, which makes up Jefferson County and Gilpin County. Now here in Adams and Broomfield, right? I mean, it's a pretty vast expanse, two very large counties, very large municipalities in there. So you're all the way out to the east, right? Eastern Adams County, which is agricultural and rural, all the way back across the west to the western suburb of Broomfield, which borders on Boulder. In Adams County, it's roughly 1,187 square miles. And I think Broomfield's about 30, if I remember correctly, about 30 square miles. So you're looking at about 1,220 square miles of jurisdiction. Included in that, of course, are a number of law enforcement agencies, the Adams County Sheriffs, Westminster, Thornton, North Glen, Aurora, Federal Heights, Commerce City, Broomfield, and hopefully I didn't forget anybody, but a number of those agencies. All those agencies are responsible for protecting and serving their communities. And then as they investigate or have cases come in, it comes up to the district attorney office, whose responsibility is to prosecute. And you hope the top priority would be public safety. We can talk about that later. But and then they go through that court process. So it's a big county, a lot of responsibility, and I'm up for the task.
And you've got a big job ahead of you. So that helps everybody understand why there's those different districts and different representatives where you work as a prosecutor. So we'll let you take a drink, and I'll let Dave kind of head off with his pint and his city updates, and we'll get started.
So first of all, and I know Tim is a big police supporter. I've seen a lot of the FOPs have endorsed Tim, and because he knows what he's doing. But it is Police Week, and so I have my Westminster PD pint here, and I'm drinking a Corona hard seltzer because I'm back on my low carb diet for 3 days in to get rid of my COVID-19.
And for the people, this is 0 carbs and 0 sugars. We have not had these before, so this is, well, what do you think?
It's a 0 carb drink.
It's different, right?
Okay.
Well, I know I follow you guys, and Vanessa, first of all, congratulations on running. Thank you for doing that. And I wish you the best of luck in your campaign. I always like, of course, following your posts and stuff. You cook some mean looking stuff, man. I'll tell you, that looks great.
We enjoy the Atkins lifestyle. It's a great company. They're actually based here locally in Denver. So that's really been a good support for us to have something solid to hold on to with that diet, but really to show people that low carb and that lifestyle, it is tasty. It's not just salad and cheeseburgers with no buns. Although
I actually worked at Atkins for 8 years. And so at Atkins, I've worked at the company EAS that did the Body for Life that was up in Golden. And then I worked at another one called Core Jensen. So about 15 years in diet nutrition. And I always joked like I should be way skinnier because like I know all the different diets and I know that they work. But you know, one of the CEOs I worked for, he always used to say Atkins isn't for everybody. It's, you know, for certain people. And I think that's really the key to finding the right kind of lifestyle and making it a lifestyle, not like a fad diet. Otherwise it goes away. So, but real quick, I want to kind of get into a city update, and I'd actually like to get kind of your take as a legal mind on like what we're looking at. So the city of Westminster did a mask mandate, and first I'm going to preface this. It's really essentially a resolution saying we're ordering you / asking you nice because there's no penalty. But it is a mandate and it is written as an order. And one of my problems with it was, well, one, I don't think that we need to mandate things like that as a government personally. I have been, you know, personally saying, you know, we're encouraging, listen to the CDC, do the right thing, take care of yourself and others. But we did have, you know, our police departments, you know, they spoke and shared some concerns that they had. And one of the things I'm curious about is, you know, aside from the fact ours, they don't really plan on doing enforcement. But the other thing is the people who can't for a good medical reason wear them, such as people with mental health issues, or maybe, you know, they have COPD, or, you know, the litany of other things that would cause somebody not to wear a mask. So with so many cities and stuff doing those mandates or states, like what does that look like if they did try to do that? Or do they have any ground to do that? And kind of, do you have a take on it? And if you don't, that's, you know, that's fine too, but I'm curious.
No, I do have a take on it. A couple things. I read one of your posts, I think yesterday, where you had commented about what was said by another member of your council in regards to government's responsibility to sometimes do what's best for the citizenry, even though they don't know what's best for them. I got a problem with that. I think what I need to start off in the beginning is that, you know, as a lawyer and as a prosecutor, and just quite frankly, as an American, I will defend the Constitution. All right, I stand for the rule of law, and I think, you know, I actually stand for due process for everyone. Okay, to me, it's about doing the right thing every time in every case. And before I get into that, I want to just mention that I'm a prosecutor. I'm not a politician. Okay, I've been a prosecutor for 28 years, and as far as I'm concerned, the position of district attorney should be about who is equipped to provide our communities and residents the best public safety. What it should not be about is politics, political opportunities or affiliations, or a launching pad for your political career. Okay, so that being said, you know, it's interesting that the take on this, and I want to kind of back up a few weeks when all this started. And all of a sudden, these stay at home and all these orders came out, and all these, you know, you can't go here, you can't go there, and the face mask thing. Not one chief of police, not one sheriff, not one district attorney was consulted about any of that, those orders or rules or laws. I mean, it was somewhat kind of a complete surprise that all of a sudden the governor and the attorney general came out and said, oh, if you violate this, it's a class 1 misdemeanor, you know, up to a year in the county jail and a $5,000 fine. So, you know, the district attorneys separate and together, along with the chiefs of police, all kind of got together. And I think that what the consensus was, and there's an article actually in the CPR news that I picked up a couple of weeks ago, and I actually posted it on Life as a Prosecutor during the or coronavirus, sorry. And what they talk about is they're not going to go out and physically enforce simply for you're not wearing a mask. If a public health crime or order is violated during the course of perhaps another crime, whether a robbery, a burglary, an assault, or something like that, then they would consider following that, but and proceeding on that. But simply going out and doing that, I have not seen anybody or any agency that I know or have friends in that are doing that. Number one. Number two, I think the other thing is in the folks that I've spoken to in law enforcement, they really take an education aspect to it. You know, they go up there, they educate, they say, here's things that you need to understand, and here's how, you know, social distancing, wearing a mask, etc. But back to your point, you know, wearing a mask, you brought up some good reasons in terms of exceptions. I've actually run across a couple folks that have anxiety. It's almost like a claustrophobic, you know, reaction to that. So I guess what I tell people is, you know, I choose not to wear one. I'm very careful around other people. Number one. Number two, going into the courthouse, I was talking with candidate DeMott here before we got started. They're going to start opening up the courthouses here in a couple of weeks, and the judges have I don't want to call it mandate, but order that you wear a mask, right? However, there are certain courtrooms and certain judges where if you're specifically or acceptably spaced, you don't have to wear one. So I think we've seen across the country how officers initially were very confused. I'm not confused. They didn't get a lot of guidance. How about that? You know what I mean? I mean, they're told from elected officials or bureaucrats, you need to do this. Their command staff is like, well, we're not really sure what we're doing. So here they are in this rock and hard place. These are men and women dedicated to protecting and serving our communities. You know, they're going out, they're going to help people, they're going to stop crime, to fight crime, whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden that whole thing got shifted. And now they're out there, you know, oh, you're walking your dog, you should be wearing a mask. Or, oh, you're walking with your husband, but you're not social distancing. Yep. Most of them that I spoke to aren't fans of that. So back to your question, there's really no legal teeth to that. My thought is that if you want to, fine. If you don't want to, fine. People that want to wear it, great. Respect it. Respect their position. Respect their desire to wear it. Fine. You know, if you don't want to, then you keep your social distance for the time being and go from there. That help?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But and you know, I think it's our whole system is based on personal accountability and freedom, and you know. And I guess like the argument has been like, oh, well, you know, your liberty ends at hurting me, which is true. But I mean, you don't know that I'm going to hurt you. You don't like, I could have had the virus and been through the virus or my bigger problem, honestly, is people I've seen shaming people and calling them jerks and this and that or the other. And I know people who can't wear them. Some people, they choose not to. Maybe they are being a jerk. I don't know. Some people are jerks. You know, you have that freedom in this country to be a jerk. But the point is, you know,
well, maybe we should get that clarified, right? That is still legal to be
sure,
a jerk.
Pretty sure.
Well, yeah, last I checked, I don't think the Constitution was superseded by certain government or governor rules. Maybe there's some issues with the public health crisis, but I don't know where your free speech, right to assemble, and all that went away. You know, you bring up a good point, and you know, it's unfortunate that. Among other things, that aspect got weaponized. So somehow I'm less caring because I'm healthy, I take care of myself. I'm taking that, you know, I guess risk, if you will. But then to be called selfish or whatever, tyrannical, I guess, for lack of a word, because I don't do it, that's not right. Everybody makes their own choice. That's why it's America, it's freedom. You get to make your own choice on that. I personally, from my go ahead.
I just was really going to back that up because you both have hit on something so important there that really it should have always been about the education of it, about informing our citizens and educating our citizens. That's what we expect them with any laws. We expect pedestrians to know certain laws. We expect drivers to know about laws to protect pedestrians because they might not know those laws. Right. So should be that level of education first. And if you've never educated the public, how can you expect them to do, I suppose, anything? But there's so many complex pieces of it that I think you're right. You've seen so much. So I wanted to ask you had kind of talked about our officers out there on the front lines. These are brave men and women who go through any crisis that you've seen in our country. And they're always on the front lines, regardless of the crisis. What kind of crimes are they responding to right now? Or, I mean, people have been behind their doors. It's all good, right?
Well, you'd like to think that, but unfortunately, criminals don't abide by quarantine rules or the governor's stay-at-home rule. They can be, and I'm not trying to be, denigrating, but they can be creative in how they choose to break the law. What I can tell you is that right now, of course, property crimes, we've seen an enormous increase in those. I think up to, in some cases, 36% around the metro area, and in some places up to 49%. That's a lot. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, there was an article about Boulder that had witnessed or had suffered, maybe suffered a 180% increase in burglaries. Now, what's really concerning about that is that we're supposed to be at home. A lot of these are occurring in the daytime. I know out here in Adams County a few weeks ago, they had very brazen home invasion robberies and burglaries. Knock on the door, bust through the door, and commit their crime. So one of the things that is interesting, I say that, one of the things I've noticed with the crime rate and things of that is when this whole started, and we can talk a little bit more about this too, but when this all started, there was an immediate effort to alleviate some of the stress in our local jails, right? By trying to, quote, cure the spread, flatten the spread, and allow defendants out of jail. I can tell you from my experience, it was a strong collaborative effort between the defense bar, the public defenders, the judge, and then the DA's office. But they were very long and lengthy hearings, took a lot of time, and they stayed up on that. So that's, when I say working together, like that's fine. And obviously there were very high standards employed, public safety being first and foremost. You always look at a person's criminal history. And part of that includes whether or not they're going to show up, right? Failure to appears. And you also wanted to look for a stable support system at home, where they could go. You just don't want to turn them out and put them on the street, right? So that happened a lot. And unfortunately, what we're seeing now is people who are given that opportunity, right, to have a PR bond, to not be in a jail that perhaps could be a more expansive, breeding ground for that stuff. They get out, and guess what? They're back, right? And now they've got 2 cases pending. And then maybe they make that argument again, and you end up with a friendly court is like, yeah, I'm going to give you another PR bond. Don't do that again. And then they're back. So that's what we've kind of started to see now. Is, I don't want to call them repeat customers, but really that's what they are. But the other thing too, and another great point you brought up with this, courts aren't just about, and I think a lot of this junk is on TV. Courts aren't just about, bring them in, lock them up, and throw away the key, okay? You have a lot of these, what we call specialty courts, drug court, DUI court, mental health court, that are very valuable inside the criminal justice system, okay? Well, now all of a sudden the courts are pretty much locked up, right? What we're starting to see is these people that were working through their addictions, be it alcohol, drugs, mental health, things like that, they're not able to kind of have that accountability, and they're stuck, quarantined at home. And we're starting to see the relapse, and that's tough, because these are people that were making great progress that you can point to as a success story, and now they're starting to relapse. I mean, I read something terrible the other day. Suicide rates starting to go up. This has been, what are we up to now? 6, 7, 8 weeks of this. It's time to open it up. I mean, we gotta do this. We gotta get people back to work. You gotta get people back into the ability to have treatment, and help with their addictions, and give people some hope.
So,
Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
and on that note, last week we had Don Mosley, who is the director of the Ralston House. And so we talked a lot about some of the challenges around, and the dangers, frankly, of people being at home. And a lot of that, the 2 things that I've heard a lot about that we're concerned about as kids, they're locked at home with their potential, if they're in an abusive situation. Same with domestic violence. And I know I've been hearing across the world, really, I've been hearing horrifying stats specifically about domestic violence, but I know the kids are another area that people should think about. With that being said, though, like, you step into the role of DA, and you talked about some of the special courts. Like I know that Adams County has a really good veterans court that I've heard about that I think is very awesome. Talk to us about those partnerships and how you foster those, you know, going in to be the DA. I know Matt, we talked a little bit with Matt Durkin, who's running over in the western half of the city.
Say it with me, Dave. It's the first judicial district.
I let her.
Judicial district, right.
But with that, like, you know, talk about that a little bit with us.
Sure. I think, you know, one of the things to kind of, if we do a little historical walk here is, you know, over the last 40 years, there's been this dramatic transformation and expansion of a prosecutor or DA's mission. You know, maybe 40, 50 years ago, you sat in your office, you might have advised law enforcement, you might have done some trainings, but basically they investigate, they bring the case to you and you prosecute. And over the last, you know, the fundamental goal of any prosecutor is to protect their community and the residents, you know, they're in, and ensure justice by enforcing the law. So it was somewhat kind of a limited role and a passive one when all you're doing is evaluating and prosecuting arrests. Now we move forward, you know, over the last 40 years, it's really become a very expansive mission, if you will. So you not only have the aspect of prosecuting and evaluating and the law enforcement part of it, but now you have, you know, and in the last several years, mental health and drug addiction are kind of, you know, bootstrapped. They're kind of one and the same, very present in the criminal justice system. So you have to look at other ways to assist in that or to help with that. Hence the reason your specialty courts. Your Veterans Court in Adams County is fantastic. The drug court, mental health court, there's family courts. There's all kinds. I think you can really, you know, sky's the limit with resources, right? Depending on what the resources are, to engage in and develop those types of courts. So, you know, when you have, I'll give you a perfect example. They changed the drug laws here recently, but, you know, a year or two ago, somebody gets caught with a little bit of drugs, and it's called a drug level felony 4. So it's still a felony, right? But, you know, it's these small, minuscule amounts. And you know from reading the person's criminal history and reading the report, this is a person who has an addiction, right? So, you know, you want to give them the opportunity. You got to give them the opportunity for treatment, rehabilitation, things like that. And that's where the probationary sentence would come in. That's maybe a drug court would help, right? You know, on the other hand, the people that are bringing that poison into your community, all right, your drug dealers, your drug distributors, your drug manufacturers, that's where the hammer needs to be. I mean, I've always said this all along, and perhaps it's naive, but I'm a real kind of a simple economics guy, right? You take away the demand, then the supply is going to have to dry up, okay? And as far as I'm concerned, if elected district attorney, we're going to put nice big neon signs on either side of the county that say drug dealers, big mistake, come in here. So
I think you cover so many topics, and I can tell this resonates with so many people because we've got just a plethora of people that are watching and to say hi to. We have our #1 fan, Mark Clark, and Mark is over in Adams County. So maybe he will shout out some great questions, some concerns he has being an Adams County resident, as well as, you know, his service that he's shared there over the years.
sure.
I think a few other people, I don't know, my glasses are not working.
Well,
tonight.
yeah, and if folks have questions, you know, put them in the comments and we'll see if we can't get to them. You know, I've talked to you, like I remember when we first actually got to sit down, we met multiple times before, but when I decided I was thinking about endorsing you, and you and I had coffee together, and you just kind of shared with me why you want to do this and why you think you're the best candidate. And I know you and I share, we obviously are both on the Republican side. However, I think you and I share a common theme as far as that's not the be all for us. Like it's about working for everybody, even those who have different mindsets, and frankly, you know, that a lot of times can help you make a good decision. And I really got that same feel from you, and that's part of the reason why, you know, I thought you were worth me endorsing. So talk to us about that. Like why Tim? Like if you're somebody who's not a Republican and you typically just vote, you know, down the ballot with one side, or you're an independent, why would you ask them to look at Tim to be their DA?
Sure. And thank you for that question. I think a couple of things, you know, and we just sort of touched on it. There's just this massive, this transformation of the whole district attorney mission, and then the court system. You know, we have reformists over here. We have people that want to, you know, keep the community safe. And I'm going to start off by saying this. I'm the most experienced prosecutor and attorney in this race. I've done this for 28 years. I mean, I can't really tell you what made me want to be a district attorney, but I always remember back in the day, because a little background, born in Great Falls, Montana, graduated from Grand Junction High School, got my degrees from Colorado State University and Creighton School of Law. I practiced in Wyoming and in Colorado, okay? I've always been a prosecutor. It's what I've always wanted to do. And I just remember from the very beginning, back in those high school days, which was a long time ago, I just wanted to help people. I wanted to be a part of my community. I enjoyed law enforcement. I enjoyed the kind of the formality of it, but I knew that ultimately you can do great good for your community. And I think that's kind of almost the definition of being a public servant, right? So I'm running for Adams and Broomfield counties because of my proven track record of experience and integrity, and to provide the kind of servant leadership to the communities in which I live and work, all right, and that they deserve. I think we talked about, unfortunately criminals don't abide by that. But the other thing is we need to quit recycling, failed leadership that's plagued that district attorney's office over the last several years. I have no problem with this. I think people should expect, they should demand that your law enforcement and your criminal justice system are the epitome of integrity. And unfortunately, over the last couple of years, I think that office has lost sight of that. And I have the integrity and the experience to bring that back and restore that. I think it's also important to note that over my career, I've had strong and collaborative working relationships with everybody that has come in touch with the criminal justice system, be it law enforcement, be it defense attorneys, be it judges, probation, victims of crime, support staff, victim advocates. I mean, I've worked with all of them. They're all very dedicated people, but you have to do that. I mean, I get that the system is an adversarial system. Of course, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's all been, lollipops and roses when you have trials against, members of the defense bar. But at the end of the
lollipops and roses, I don't think you would have a job.
No, I don't think so. No, but they got a job to do too. And you know what? At the end of the day, you might be mad at each other. Fine, in a couple of days you work it out. But you're doing that for the right reasons. But my problem is that if we continue to ignore what's going on up there, then that culture of misconduct is just going to continue uninterrupted. I think the residents of our community deserve better. They deserve somebody whose priority is them and public safety, as opposed to the other way around, which is, what are you going to do for me?
So with a lot of bringing this back, and that's my campaign, is for the people, is we're here, we are public servants. And I love how you have phrased this so many times, that you are a prosecutor, not a politician. I want to be a public servant, not a politician. I want to be there to serve the people. What crimes or what cases, what are you not seeing prosecuted right now that needs to be? I got a whole list of things. So if
All right.
I can give you a few, but
No,
what when you prosecute better crimes? Or
I think, and keep in mind a couple things about being in the role of a district attorney. Number one, we don't make the laws, right? So the legislature does that, and then they bring it to here. The two things that I have a concern about, now I'll answer your question about charges I don't think are being prosecuted correctly, versus another aspect that I have a real problem with. And that one first is these activist DAs, okay? You can look around the country and you can see, where those activist DAs got in, and I have a real problem with how they're handling their office, how they're handling their system, and what they're doing. And you can see that there's an immediate animosity with the law enforcement and with how things are done. And unfortunately, we have some of that right here in our backyard too. Again, I don't think I told you at the beginning, it's not about politics. It shouldn't be about politics. It should be who can do the best, or who's the best equipped for public safety. Now, in terms of crimes and stuff, sometimes what I see, across the metro area, and specifically here is concerning, is the lack of prosecution of drug cases. And when I say that, let's go back to what I talked about. The person that's got these little small possession bags, and it's evident that they have an addiction, you got to get them the help, right? My concern is these individuals that are bringing in quantities, are openly dealing, distributing, manufacturing, and giving it to a dealer. you're just not hearing about it. I mean, they're just coming in, they're getting their standard, deal and out the door. And I think what I want to tell you too, something that's important. I talked about the integrity issues up there. Over the last 4 or so years, that office has experienced close to a 75% employee turnover rate. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute, all right? 75% employee turnover rate. Think of these are good people that worked in this county, that worked for their communities, that worked in this district, that even some lived in this district. And, whatever reason they left, some were forced out, some resigned, some maybe retired, but that is a historic number, okay? So when you have that, you lose that institutional knowledge, and then all of a sudden there becomes a training issue because you're hiring people, they're not getting trained adequately, and they're not learning how to assess a case properly. They're not giving good sentences, or they're not assessing the case right. They're not seeking things that they should be doing. And like you said, violent cases sometimes go out the road because perhaps they're not trained right, or worse yet, there's apathy that just has no place for that.
Right. I see a few questions coming in. So if you're willing to take a few from our viewers, I think these are some great questions, given that collaboration of where schools and our communities and everything comes in. So Mark,
Sure.
Mark Clark had his question was, your thoughts on opioids within the school district, within Adams County, within, 27J, ongoing issue right now. Maybe it doesn't seem like anything because kids aren't there, but it's
well, the concern is kids aren't there, then they're at home and they have access to it as well there possibly, and that's an even bigger problem because then they're going to start getting addicted on that and have problems with that. The opioid crisis is always there, and it's probably I don't want to say mushroom, but it's probably gotten more or worse just since we've had the stay at home versus the safer at home. It's a real problem. It's always going to be a problem. I'll give you an example. I have a pending case out where I'm at right now. The allegations, remember, it's just a charge right now. It's only an allegation. There's nothing been proved yet. But this individual had close to 7.5 pounds of pure fentanyl. Okay. Now, I did not know this because I did a little research, and another gentleman in my office did the same thing. That something like 2 maybe milligrams of that can kill a person. So this stop contained enough fentanyl that 1.5 million people, which is all of Jefferson County, could have expired. So it's alive and well. And when you're talking about your heroin, and that's made a comeback. Methamphetamine is still around. Cocaine, occasionally you get some of that. But methamphetamine is still cooking along, but your heroin is really coming out, and they're making it more and more powerful. They get these kids hooked on this, and then they keep coming back for more. So yeah, the opioid crisis is unfortunately here, and it needs to be dealt with. So to answer Mark's question, yeah, we're still seeing it.
Well, and I think, this goes back to your point. So I lost a friend who, was a victim of opioids, and this isn't a dealer person. This is somebody who got hooked on it through, and I really honestly don't know. It's a close friend, and I was really shocked when I heard that they died. So I think this is something that I really follow because I think it's important that we keep our foot on it. Because, and I want people like you that don't want to put people in prison that need to get out of the cycle, that you're trying to, you want justice served and they need to answer for their crimes, but you also, want to break the cycle so they're not just a revolving door at the jails, because that helps society, and that also helps the jails. I mean, that's what we want. We don't want people just locked away. I don't think that's our intent. So, and I've heard a lot of that from you and, here today and talking to you before. So, that's another good thing why I would look at you for DA. So it's a rough situation, and there's a lot of people out there that are just broken.
Well,
I agree with that. Yeah.
So, some of those questions we had kind of talked about beforehand. I think you both are really hitting on something here. And I know law enforcement, and I don't want to assume, but the DA's office and prosecutors as well, there's very much a reactive approach when we have crime in our cities. And we're going to kind of get into some of those dangerous cities and what kind of crimes are happening in there. But I guess I come at more of a proactive approach. And when I look at studies and I do research and I see when we have a prison population and when over 90% of our prison population can say they experienced abuse at home, they were, physical abuse, sexual abuse, that led them into drugs. Drugs is what got them into the court in the crime and that revolving door. I know it's hard to answer on your end, and understanding, you've done your fair amount of research on dangerous cities. Where are we seeing that correlation? Because I am all about proactive. Can we just start with kids, places like Ralston House that give people justice and stop it from happening in the first place?
Well, first of all, you indicated you talked to Mr. Mosley, what was it, last week on Ralston House? What a marvelous facility. I don't know what else to say other than that. It's great work they do over there. I've had, in my career here in Adams, I've had cases that I've gone over there where they've had to do forensic interviews, where I've actually got a tour of it. And to be honest with you, I think it should be required if people get the opportunity to go over there and check it out, because what a great safe haven for kids. But I'm going to answer your question, and I want to back up just a little bit. On my campaign journey here and talking to law enforcement, and I was very fortunate this week. Our campaign picked up Broomfield's Fraternal Order of Police Lodge endorsement. So we've gotten now, our campaign has been unanimously endorsed by all law enforcement agencies in the 17th Judicial District. One of the things that we talked about when I was going around and talking to law enforcement is that the relationship with the district attorney's office is at best acrimonious and at worst non-existent, very toxic. I don't understand that. I wouldn't stand for it. People always sit there and think, oh, DAs and cops are in the bed. That's, pardon my language, that's crap. Okay, that's TV stuff. All right. If you have a working, a respected relationship, okay, that means you can call them up and say, hey, I'm not your rubber stamp, all right, but you can have those disagreements or you can have those arguments. Maybe they get heated, right? But how about you do it behind closed doors, and then you have a unified front when you go up? Not only the DA working with that, but like I told you, with members of the defense bar and things of that nature. So that's the relationship that you have to repair it. Now, you talk about reactive and proactive, and I think for most of the part, the criminal justice system is reactive, because I don't get up in the morning and drive to work and think, oh, I'll bet you Vanessa did a crime today. I'm just going to go arrest her and take her with me, and we're going to put her in jail, right? I mean, people are brought to the system, okay? When I say brought, they're not, voluntary. I mean, they're breaking the law and they're coming to the system. So in that regard, it is reactive. Well, going back to what we talked about, there's so many providers out in the community that help with children, right? That help on the abusive situation, that help on the drug part of it, or the sex abuse part of it, those types of things. But you're absolutely correct, Vanessa, that a lot of people end up in the criminal justice system because of that history or that background. And the best you can do is identify it, find maybe perhaps fashion a sentence that's best suited for them to try to get that kind of help, or to get that kind of counseling, or to get that kind of treatment. And I've always maintained this. Look, good citizens, I distinguish between good citizens who make mistakes, right? People do. A lot of people do, fine. Get them in, get them accountable, and get them out of the system. But also can distinguish between them and criminals who prey on our communities. And I've had, in my 28 years, I've seen human frailty, and I've sat in a courtroom across from genuine evil. And those are the ones that quite frankly forfeit their right to live among us in a free society and have to be locked up. That's just my position. So I understand what you're saying with that. I think there's a lot of ways to do. You talk about what about CASA, right? Court appointed special advocates. Great job. GALs, guardian ad litems. I mean, there's resources out there. So if I sit there and think to myself, well, boy, I don't know how to do that. Pick up the phone, call a GAL, call somebody at CASA. Where can I go? If they don't know, they can at least give you somebody to go from there.
And Tim, you've really painted that whole picture of this isn't up just to government. This isn't up to the DA's office. This is a whole community who has stepped up. And I've heard time and time again from councils and different people in advocating for those causes that Colorado is second to really none when it comes to those, taking care of those marginalized populations. So we really have a lot to be proud of here. We have a lot to go, but it sounds like you have that focus and you know how to involve those community partners, that it's so much more than just the government taking everybody's hand and saying this is how it has to happen. So I think CASA, Ralston House, a lot of those places know that you're an advocate for them and you want to keep them involved in the courts because that's what's best for our residents.
I think what we said earlier is that I think as a district attorney, you are responsible for going to your communities and asking, what can I do for you and how can I help? And then I say communities, that includes everybody, all right? As opposed to the way it's been, which is, well, what's in it for me or what are you going to do for me?
Right. So talk to us about some of those dangerous communities, though. I mean, some of these places maybe don't have advocacy centers and don't have walk-in crisis centers. So what does that look like? What are you seeing out there?
Well, I've commented on this in my newsletter and some of my posts over the last couple of months. There was a couple of studies that came out that listed, 5 of the top 10 most dangerous cities are in Adams County. That's concerning. It should concern everybody, and that's 5 too many. And the cities that were listed, getting to meet Dave and things like that. I've met other members of city councils. They're working hard for their city and their constituents and their residents. I know your police departments are working hard to protect and serve, to take care of people, to help victims of crime, and to stop it. And so, to me, it's like, well, where's the buck stop? Well, maybe it's time to have a district attorney's office that's going to look at that, address those factors, and move on. And those dangerous, what that included all kinds of, I want to say stats, but crimes, right? I mean, it was property, it was theft, it was assault, DV, child abuse, and just, if you leave your car out in the middle of the street or parked outside your house and it's gone the next morning, they considered that. So dangerousness was kind of a combination of all those types of property crimes, violent crimes, drug crimes, etc.
And all compared with kind of that per capita, that population, if this is more violence in a smaller town, that kind of makes that go up. So maybe I missed it. Did you disclose those 5 cities? Do we get to know? Is that like a stay tuned till
no, it was Federal Heights, Commerce City, Aurora, Thornton, and it wasn't Westminster, it was North Glen.
Okay.
So Westminster dodged the bullet. Good job, Dave. Way to go. But, again, I know, look, I've lived in this community for 20 years. We raised our kids here and our family here, and we still are. I did not move here because of political opportunities or to launch a career. I moved here because of the opportunities it presented to my family personally, right? And to me professionally to take care of the communities. And that's what I like to do. So when I see them, your city council's working hard and your law enforcement and your providers working hard, and they're still making the top 10 list, then perhaps you need to, focus as a DA and meet with those communities to find out, hey, what's the issue? What's the areas? What do we got to fix here?
Wow, that's got to be eye-opening. And there's no way in this great audience that we have tonight and that's out there in all of Facebook land and all of Adams County that doesn't recognize that as as being an issue. And when it comes to property, that's our fundamental right is that life and our liberties and our properties, and that affects everybody when that crime hits them. So.
Well, and something else, car theft, I guess I didn't realize it was so lucrative, but there's so many underlying reasons for it, right? I mean, it's the person who's addicted, they got to get the fix, they're going to steal your car, they're going to sell it for drugs, right? Or you got the guy who's like, I think Ford pickups and Chevy Silverado pickups are hot, on the stolen car market. Okay,
sorry,
yeah, I got one too, that, the stolen car market, right? But, those increase all the time, and that's not. They consider that a property crime, And I think to myself, well, how about the owner of that car? What about the single mom who's maybe got 2 kids, has to get out, get the kids to one to daycare, one to school, and then go off to that job, walks out her front door, and the car's gone. You know, and you call your boss, hey, look, my car got stolen. Well, I don't know, you better get to work by 9 o'clock or we got a problem. And how does that not impact that individual? So if you can, again, to me, it's getting to the root of the problem and dealing with it.
So I think I recall one of the most eye-opening town halls actually we had attended was about the opioid crisis. And we had talked about, here's kind of how that pattern of crime happens. And when you have a break-in into your car, that's your property. Yeah, maybe they only took $5 and change, and maybe they took your gym bag. This has happened to us, and it is so violating. I don't care if it's your gym bag, if it's a taser that you really, really liked, or if it's a pair of sunglasses, your property was stolen. But how important is it to report those crimes? Because they're taking those items because there's money and there's a reason they're taking them. And perhaps it helps build at least a pattern. I mean, in that town hall, people felt like, I don't report these things because it's only $5, or, you know, what does it matter? But when you see an entire street having their property, you know, attacked, isn't that something?
Sure, absolutely it is. So let's break that down a little bit. If I'm walking down the street and I look inside the car and there's a computer in there, and I test the door's open, I open the door, I reach in, bend in, right, grab the computer and go. Let's, for sake of argument, the computer's worth $200. And according, you know, using your example, well, what's the point of reporting that? The actual opening of the door and going in is what we would call breaking, right? So there is a crime, a class 5 felony, first-degree criminal trespass of a motor vehicle.
Yep.
Knowingly enter with the, knowing that you're going to commit a crime therein, in this case, theft. So my own thought is I would always encourage people to call, because you got to make a police report. And the other thing is you call. Okay, so you got your car, you go out there and you're like, man, something's not right. And then you remember that Dave said he left you, you know, a $20 bill in the ashtray area, right?
That was his allowance, so I guess, you know.
Right. So all of a sudden you're out there and it's like, well, it's not there. Then you look around and obviously your car's been rummaged through, right? Okay, well, so it's like, well, do I want to report the 20? No big deal. Well, then you go to work, you come home. All of a sudden your Facebook or your phone blows up and say, hey man, did somebody break into your car? Well, I'm not sure, but I'm missing the 20. Then you go around your entire neighborhood and you find out that everybody had their car taken into. So that's why it's important to call that, because officers need that type of information. Law enforcement does, to at least start that investigation and roll with it from there.
Agreed. And just for the sake of argument, would it be wise to say reporting it on your neighborhood sites is not reporting it to the police? That does not get to the police department. That is not an appropriate way to share information. If it is a crime, call it in. I can't say that it's not great when you're kind of told, like, I don't know if we're going to catch this person, but hey, at least they're establishing there's some activity going on. So.
Well, and it has its place, I guess, as long as you report it as well. Because what I've seen in our city is typically, or even our neighborhood, is then people check and be like, oh, maybe my car, you know, then they go look and see, did somebody take something? Did I leave my car unlocked? But reporting it is important because, you know, maybe one of the neighbors who had something stolen has a Ring camera, and maybe they only took $20 from your car, but maybe they took a firearm from a car down the street. You know,
Correct.
So there's a lot of different good reasons why you want to report it, and it's, you know, it's about the community really, because maybe it wasn't a big deal what they took from you, but maybe down the street they took some, you know, a work laptop that earned somebody their livelihood. So, you know, it's not in a silo really when those break-ins happen, and it's not typically they're not just finding that one car, they're walking down the street checking cars, and it
is in every sense of the word a crime of opportunity. They did maybe set out to do that, but all of a sudden they're walking through and it's like, wow, this is a nice neighborhood. These are pretty nice cars. Maybe there's something in there, and they start checking it out. And so we're clear, I'm a firm supporter of the Second Amendment. So if somebody stole my gun, yes, I would call the cops immediately. Now, if somebody who doesn't, right, and thinks, oh, well, whatever, you know, if that gun gets used in in another crime, guess who's going to come knocking on your door if they find that gun? And all of a sudden, well, why didn't you report it? Now, I realize that might be a little, rhetorical, because most people would do that. But, keep that in mind. You may not know that your checkbook got stolen, right? Or you do, and it's like, oh, there's only one check left in there, big deal. You go cruising off, and then all of a sudden that check gets kited somewhere, and you're being contacted by the police.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You bring a wide range of topics to it, and I think that is so enlightening for people to see that property spans over not just your house and your front yard. Property is everything that you carry on your person. Property is everything that you drive down the street, good and bad. That can, it's yours, but you're also responsible for it. So it's enlightening. As we wrap up, I have questions for you about campaigns. So we'll end on some really positive notes, or maybe positive. How the heck are you campaigning right now? What is your go plan without, divulging all the great secrets in Camp McCormack? But, how are you getting out there? How are you trying to reach people, during our time at home?
Sure. I want to say this: during the course of the campaign, I've really met some incredible people, and I love, that was hard. I love getting out in the community, talking to people, meeting people. It's exhausting, as you're finding out, but it was great. And when I get to meet people like Councilman Dave there, that are willing to help out, it means a lot. So, up until this point, we were doing everything like you were doing. You're getting out, you're knocking on doors, you're meeting people, you're making phone calls. And then it just kind of came to a stop in March, and we really pivoted and have now increased our presence on social media. I've been very fortunate to make contact with 560 KLZ. So I'm I get to go on the mornings with Kim Munson every couple of weeks with her, which is great.
Kim's great people.
We've been doing I started a couple of, and just so we're clear, social media kind of terrifies me. And all your listeners, if they know me, they know that this is really uncomfortable, but you got to get the message out. So, I've started doing a Q&A with McCormack for DA on Tuesday nights. Opportunities like this, I can't thank you two enough for having me on and allowing me to talk about the campaign and what we believe on. So absolutely, if we go through this and you'd like me back on, I'm at your disposal, no problem. So a lot of it's that, phone calls, calling folks, and just getting the word out. A lot of emails, a lot of Facebook Live, a lot of Zooms, a lot of town hall meetings, and it's the thing I haven't gotten very good at. But and of course my significant other Renee, look, if she wasn't on board with me and wasn't helping me every single day, who knows where I'd be. But she's kind of she's the captain, man. She gets me where I need to be. She marks it on the calendar. She gives me the heads up. It's great because you got 3 calendars, right? You've got and all of this stuff. I still got a real job that I got to do.
Well, you should win on the fact alone that you obviously are a very well-trained husband and very proud. I couldn't agree more. To have a supportive spouse, that's everything, because it's not an easy job to get out there and put yourself out there and your family. So a big applaud to Renee for everything that she's done to help support you along the way. So.
And you too, man. You guys are doing great.
Yeah. It's not boring here. We have 4 kids and some dogs and some guinea pigs and work and school, and it's fun, right?
What about your campaign when we wrap up?
Yeah.
So absolutely. So that's the best part of this is I get to use this opportunity to talk about my campaign. So DeMontfortColorado.com, great place to go to start off. You can learn all about me there, but my platform, just like Tim had said, I don't find partisan issues because I want to find issues that are for the people. And for that, I look at mental health. I look at school safety and education. I look at growth and transportation. This coronavirus doesn't change any of this. Mental health now more than ever is going to be so, I guess, persistent in our society. And we need to make sure that we have access and we have providers, and we give people that opportunity to seek help for themselves. School safety will continue to be an issue. School safety may look different now as how do we keep our kids safe from a prevailing disease, but how do we also keep their mental health and their social skills up? And what does that look like? And are all kids equally accessing our education system right now? I fear that that's not the case. And I fear that not every district has those capabilities. Beyond that, growth in transportation, roads is just not a partisan issue. Roads will never be a partisan issue. We all want roads. And I think now we see we want to be in our cars, and we're going to have that time by ourselves. Public transportation will not be utilized as much. How important is it now to know that we have roads that can get us places, and nobody wants to be stuck in traffic? I know as an environmental person, I love clean air. I've really enjoyed 8 to 10 weeks of this fresh air, but the fact of the matter is when we get out there, that will still be an issue. So let's keep people moving on our roads so they can get to places without that congestion. And let's make that a focus. I think just because it hasn't been a focus. Again, we're looking at a crazy deficit in that budget. So as a state representative, I'm a conservative. I can do a lot with a little. I always have, and you need a representative that's going to go into that office and ready to take it head on, and be able to look at those issues with a critical mindset, not just in your chamber of thought. And again, you got to work with everybody. So this has been a great way to keep that message out there, and I appreciate that dialogue with people like you, Tim, fighting for the people.
Yeah, this has been really good. For me, city council, we meet Monday. We have another meeting, so stay tuned. I usually share that. The other thing I wanted to share with people is I actually made a YouTube channel specifically for Policy and Pilsner, because we've decided that, you know, these are pretty nice and fun, and we know a lot of people, so we can bring light to good organizations like the Ralston House. There's some other organizations that we've done work with, and I'm hoping I can get some representatives on and bring light to what they do, because I think that's important. With that, one of the closing things that I decided we're going to start doing is doing a $20 donation to your favorite nonprofit. So if you tell me what your favorite nonprofit is, the DeMots will make a $20 donation, and we'll start doing that for guests who decide that they want to join us.
All right. Wow, that's good. There's so many. I like, there's one in Commerce City that I've gotten to research on. Does it have to be Westminster, or can it be anywhere in the county?
Your favorite one. It doesn't even have to be in Colorado.
It's called the Colorado Uplift Program.
Okay.
CUP Colorado.
All right.
So if you can type that in, that'd be great.
Yep. No,
Awesome.
we will do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll make sure to get that in the comments, or maybe you can, just so you know that website,
Sure.
Get that into the comments in our live feed, and that way we can promote that, and we'll make our donation. Maybe others will be inclined to at least check them out.
Okay.
That's fantastic. We didn't discuss this beforehand, but way to go.
I know, nicely done, Dave.
Well, last week we've been donors of Ralston House for a really long time. That's an important organization, but I like people being able to realize that, you know, government doesn't always have to be the solution. There's a lot of great organizations out there doing a lot of great work, but they need support from people like us in order to do the things that they do. You know, and that's really more of a community approach, and I think it's really important. With that, you know, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you taking time here. I guess the other thing I would mention is make sure what website can people go to support and donate to your campaign, and maybe we can make sure that we put that in the comment of the video as well. Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's McCormack for DA. That's MCCORMACK for DA, FORDA. So Mac, not Mick. That's my website. It's got the contact information on there. team@mccormackforda.com is the email. Absolutely, check it out. You can get a hold of me there. There's numbers that you can call. You're not going to get a robocall or an answering machine. I mean, if I'm in court, obviously I got to go, but you'll get to talk to me at some point if they call. So I appreciate that. Yep,
No,
yep,
very good.
absolutely.
You've been great. I'm so glad to at least
Thanks.
get to see you. I know we'll get to see you in person at some point. So thank you again, Tim, and best of luck. Thank you, Renee, for all your help getting Tim onto social media tonight.
Well, thank you guys again, and I appreciate it. And I'll put that information in here once we hang up.
Sounds
do.
good. God bless.
All right. Good night, everyone.
All right. Thank you.